Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today we have a career clinic episode for you. It's been quite a while since we did one of these. And these episodes, if you've not listened to one before, are where we share real questions that have come up for either listeners or our clients over the last few weeks. And they are things that we feel like, oh, yeah, those are good questions that have come up. It's worth sharing the responses. And we are now opening and doing that more formally. So once a month, we're going to be running sessions where we open this and make it available free of charge. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to register for the next one. But today we're going to share some job search specific questions that have come up and our responses. So Pam, let's go straight in with a question that probably wouldn't have come up 6 to 12 months ago, but seems to be quite a common piece of advice at the moment. And so people are, should I do this? Shouldn't I? So should people send a thank you note to the hiring manager after they've been to an interview?
So the answer to this one is always it depends. And what does it depend on? What you need to think about is what value is that thank you note going to add? And if it's because you've gone away and you've reflected on something that you said or you didn't say in that interview, then it can be quite useful to get in touch and say, thanks for your time today. On reflection, these are the additional things that I would like to talk you through or tell you about or explain to you. And that can be a really good way of providing some clarity around something you talked about. Or if you've gone away and thought, actually, I could have given a better or a stronger answer, or I wasn't expecting that question, so I didn't really have anything prepared. It is an opportunity to go back. You don't want to send them War and Peace because they're not going to read it. And ultimately, I've never known anybody get offered a job because they sent a thank you note. So you also absolutely don't have to do it. Even if you do think you've missed something, and even if you're kicking yourself, you still don't have to send a thank you note. Nothing's going to happen if you don't. And if you do, you just need to make sure that it's a strategic thank you note, not just something that's just going to add to their workload.
I think it's interesting because the reason this advice is given is to make candidates more memorable, to make them stand out, to make them show that they are genuinely interested in that role. But if there isn't a reason, if there isn't something substantial to that note, then like you say, all it does is just adds to the email inbox of the person receiving it because they've interviewed however many people. And it doesn't therefore even help you to stand out. If everybody just sends a generic, thanks for interviewing me, then that doesn't stand you apart from any other candidate. So I think so much of it is what's your purpose when you're sending a note? And is that actually going to help you achieve your aims? It's just not the way that people are going to get a job. It's not going to make a tangible difference in people's job search, is it?
No, definitely not. And I think sometimes as well, you can feel compelled to write a thank you note because something in that interview didn't feel quite right. You weren't that comfortable. So then if you're just going to send that generic note that's, oh, it was so great to meet you today. We had such a great conversation. And all the rest of it. And you were feeling quite awkward about that, then they're probably going to sense that level of awkwardness. And then it almost maybe the fakeness in that thank you letter that you feel obliged to send because you didn't think the interview went as smoothly as it could. So I do think there's a lot more to that advice, isn't it, to send that thank you note afterwards, because there is a lot of thought that you need to give to that, because obviously you've already met them, you've had a chat with them, but they're still in that first impression stage, aren't they, as well? And as I say, I've never known anybody get a job offer based on an interview thank you note. So it is something that if you feel like you can send it and add some kinds of value or offer some further clarity on reflection, then great. And if not, and like you say, if you're just trying to do it to stand out, then don't do that. Just don't send it. And if you're sitting there thinking, I've never sent a thank you note or I'm unsure whether to send it, go with your gut feeling on it. You don't have to do anything when it comes to interview thank you notes. You just need to go with your gut. What do you feel like the right thing is to do in this situation? And if you do send it, you just need to make sure that it's strategic.
Yeah, one thing I do like is the idea of sending a note where you give feedback on your candidate experience. Because if you're saying, thanks so much, I really like the way that you framed the questions, I felt like I was able to relax and be myself in the interview, that's useful feedback about the candidate experience. If you just say, it was great to meet you today, thanks so much for the interview, that adds no value. So yeah, I think very much an it depends. And I love that advice to go with your gut, because I think if people are doing it because they feel they should, that's when the cringe factor is going to be high. So on to our next question then. I really like this one. How should I handle applying for more senior positions like a head of or director role when currently in a lower position?
So I love this question, because this is something that really stands between people making that leap to go for those more senior roles and just staying where they are because they're not quite sure how to articulate it, or how to get over that fear factor of trying to take that next step. So when I saw this question, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a perfect one, because for a lot of our listeners, this is going to be probably something that goes through their mind, regardless of what level they're at. If you're looking to get to that next level, it's how do I articulate my experience? How do I show what I bring to the table? Or how can I show that I'm ready to work at that next level, even if I haven't got that experience just yet? And it is about thinking about the language that you use on your CV and in the application forms and the cover letters that you write. So if you're just going to copy and paste your job description into your CV, they're not going to really get a feel for anything that you can do above and beyond your role. So it's about thinking about the things that you are currently doing that are working above and beyond in your current role, the things that are using your leadership skills and creating that sense of, I am ready to take that next step. So if you're thinking about the language that you use, and it's what are you doing on a daily basis from a leadership perspective. Now, you might never have managed a team, but I bet you are managing different stakeholders. I bet you're having cross-functional conversations. I bet there's some kinds of external supplier or agency or something that you are linking in with, that you are effectively managing those relationships. I bet you are managing the relationship up with your line manager, maybe across with your line manager's peers. There's going to be so many different things that you can pull into your CV and think about how you tell that story, that you are ready to take this next step because of all of the great things that you've been doing in your current or previous roles.
I think a big part of it is mindset, isn't it? Because you have to almost envision yourself in that role already and think about how you articulate to somebody how you would approach that role. And you've almost got to imagine yourself in that role, and you've got to articulate things in a way that build trust really quickly. You've got to get somebody to see you in that light. And I think the mistake people often make is almost asking for an opportunity. Please give me an opportunity. And what that does is actually damages the trust, because if you're saying, oh, please give me an opportunity, then you are implying there is a risk with that opportunity. You're implying to that interviewer, to that hiring manager, that I need to be given an opportunity, implies that there's a risk, because it's focusing on the thing that you lack, which is the experience of already having done the role. Whereas when you show up in a way that you're already seeing yourself in the role, you're talking about how you'd be approaching it day to day, you're talking about how all that you've been doing has been operating at that level in terms of behaviors, in terms of competencies, in terms of approach. Yes, you might not have the exact experience or that exact job title on your CV, but that doesn't mean that you can't do a great job of it. And I think it's really starts with that internal mindset of imagining yourself in that role, imagining the behaviors, the competencies that you would be displaying, the achievements that you would be creating and contributing and adding value for that organization, and focusing on how that is a safe thing for them to give you that opportunity about what you will bring, rather than the fact that you don't already have that job title on your CV.
Yeah, and yeah, you're absolutely right, because it is about that positioning, because you don't want them reading that thinking, am I giving this person a chance? Have we got the time to train this person? Have we got the time to allow for this person's learning curve in this role? They want to see that this person can easily transition. There's always going to be a learning curve no matter what role. And it is that feeling that this person can transition into our company, into our role really easily and smoothly. And I think if you can do that by, like you say, imagining yourself in that role and thinking, what do they need to see from me on this CV or this application, then they're the things that you want to be including in there. So moving away from that copy and paste of the job description and actually thinking, what am I doing above and beyond my, my day job role, or, the role that I'm currently being paid to do? How am I displaying all of these great skills and qualities? And also looking at what are the other things that I also need to demonstrate to show that I'm ready. And sometimes you can't put that stuff on your CV because you've not yet done it, but you can definitely use a cover letter to talk through why you think that you're ready and how you can easily transition into that role.
And a good episode, if you're listening to this and thinking, what are the things that are different at different levels? What are the things that I should be demonstrating either in my CV, if I can, or in my cover letter? Then a good episode is the competency episode, where we talked about the competency framework and the different levels when we're working with clients. So we'll link to that one in the show notes. And that, if you are applying for roles or wanting to apply for roles at that next level, is a really useful one to work through that competency framework and look at where are the areas where you already can demonstrate that ability to be operating at the higher level of competency than your current job title would suggest. And you can think then about how to articulate that either within your application or within the interview process. Let's move on then to our next question. And this is relating to the application process, because one of the things that we always emphasize is the importance of really tailoring, of understanding and making sure that you create that sense of showing people that you've got what they need, and you get that from the job description or the job ad. So what is the best approach when job descriptions seem generic or AI generated? How can people take and create something memorable when what they've got to work with isn't maybe the best?
I absolutely love this question as well, because AI is being used more than ever right now. And I can't see it ever getting to a point where we don't use AI. It's going to keep getting better and better and evolving. So more and more companies will use AI. And especially now, if you've done any recruitment yourself, if you try to upload a job description into any of the job sites, they're asking, would you like us to help you write this using AI? And most people will click yes, and then it will give them what is then a generic job description. If they don't read through it properly and make the changes to really sound like the role that they're recruiting for, then obviously they're all going to start sounding the same, which if you have been in job search mode for a while and looking on the job boards, you will have definitely seen that there are so many that appear to be the same, so much so you're like, how do we differentiate between these? And then how do you then tailor your CV to stand out, or your application to stand out? So the best way to do this, and this is what has been working for our clients, is to go, right, okay, the job description is just one element. That is just one part of the recruitment process. So they're putting the job description out there. That's their advert. But actually, there's lots more stuff that you can find out about that business outside of that job description. And that is what you need to do now going forward to make sure that you are standing out. So things like understanding the market that company operates in, thinking about the challenges that they might be facing, thinking about the experience that you've got that helps them or could help them to overcome those challenges, and thinking about the company, the role, and yourself and how you would fit in. So it would size of the company, with the job and where it sits within the department. Like, is it a big department? Is it a smaller company? Like, what is the situation that role sits within? And then once you understand that, then you can start applying your experience and talking about your experience in a way that speaks to them. So rather than just going, okay, I'm just going to pull out all of the keywords because we've been told that's how we need to do it because of the ATS or the applicant tracking systems. Now we're going, right, okay, we will be aware of the keywords and we'll make sure that we're adding in keywords where it's necessary. But what we're actually going to do is think about how we can add value based on that company's situation and where I think this job role fits in. And if you do, that is going to help you stand out so much more than just trying to tailor to a job description.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I think when people are applying using job boards and looking at roles, it's very tempting to feel that you've just got to go from that information that's in front of you. But like you say, there's a whole load of other stuff that could be available. It is more intensive to go and look at that. But particularly if you're looking for kind of mid to senior roles, then we would always advocate quality over quantity when it comes to job applications. You're better to really tailor and to use what you know for fewer but higher quality job applications than to just bang your CV in for anything and everything that feels like it might be somewhere in the range. And I think one other thing that I would add to what you've shared there is there's often the opportunity to, if you are looking specifically, if you're looking on LinkedIn, but also sometimes you might find this information and be able to message people on LinkedIn. And that is to message the hiring manager or the person that's placed the job ad and say, I've seen the job ad. I'm really keen to make sure that I tailor my application because it's a job that I'm really interested in. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of quick questions? You don't have to have a call. You don't have to ask for loads of their time. But you can then potentially ask one or two quick questions that could give you some really useful insights. So it could be, what are the 2 or 3 key competencies that you need in this role? Or some of those things that might be harder to pick out, like you've just been talking about, things like the organization structure and the size of the team. If you can't tell from reading an ad how big the team is that you're going to be managing, then you might not know how much should you emphasize that. Whereas if you ask, can I just ask how many team members does this role manage, then you'll get a sense of how that might fit. And those things are not time consuming for people to answer. They're quite simple and you can just do it via a message. But knowing as an internal recruiter in my past, when people did that, we looked out for those applications coming in. Those applications got read because that person had showed initiative. That person clearly was interested enough in us, in our vacancy. And so even in a sea of lots of other applications, those got read more often.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's about what can you do to stand out? And it's not just about keywords anymore. And it's not just about beating the ATS. And we see so much of it, don't we? All of the messaging out there, you've got to beat the ATS, make sure you include the keywords. And there's so much more now to an application. And I think that's why I love what we do with the podcast, because we are constantly evolving how we work with clients and how we support clients. I feel like all of this stuff that we share and the questions that people ask, it's so useful for us to learn, for our listeners to learn. And as long as we're sharing this and people keep evolving, it's going to make it so much easier for you to get stuck into a job search and really stand out. Because what you don't want to do is get stuck into a job search thinking job searches can take a while, but actually what you're putting out there is lots of generic applications and you're not really thinking about how to show the value that you bring. And as soon as you start adding in the value information, that's where you're going to stand out, because no matter whether or not there's an applicant tracking system involved in the selection process, if a human reads that CV, they're looking for the value. They're looking for, would we get a return on investment from this person? Like, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, this person come and support us, drive our business forward, will they add value? Will they be a great return on investment? That is what they're thinking at that point. So if you can show them that value add stuff, if you can include that in there, then that's going to make it easier for you to stand out rather than worrying about applicant tracking systems and all of that kind of stuff. If you take this advice and you put that information into your applications, you'll find that you sail through those applicant tracking systems anyway.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of this episode. We will link in the show notes to the other episodes that we've talked about. But if you have found this useful and you want to ask us some of your own questions, then do check out the link for our live career clinic sessions. So we are planning to run these once a month or so, and you will always on that link find the date that's available for the next session. The way that we run those is they are run live on Zoom. So you can come into that Zoom session and we open the floor for people to be able to ask whatever question they want to ask. So they are confidential sessions and they are there and available for you to ask us questions on anything related to career. So it could be about your job search. It could be about getting promoted. It could be how to handle a tricky situation within your career or within your team, whatever you need support with. So do come and join us. We absolutely love running the sessions. They're brilliant. They keep us on our toes and make us think with the range and variety of questions that get asked. And we would love to see you at one of those. In the meantime, then please, as ever, do rate and review and do share this episode with people where they are experiencing some of those challenges that we've been talking about in the episode. And we'll be back next week with another one.